Yeah.
Dead in the middle of little did we know.
I'm serious about mine. I'm so sincere.
Now at last I have seen a judgment of Solomon.
That's right, everybody. We are back. Another beautiful live stream. I am your man, Prince Solomon, along here with
Sincere Ignorant.
That's what's up, man. Let's go ahead and get off into this thing. It looked like this boy here, Eminem, came back and he actually gave us something worthy to listen to. And this is talking about minus the Eminem stands, because we know you all love Relapse. We had an Eminem stand in denial call in and talk about Eminem's Relapse album was one of his better albums. I said, have several seats, sir. But that being said, this album here, Kamikaze, you know it, with the Beastie Boy album cover inspired theme. Eminem went in and crashed the building. In my personal opinion, of course, we're going to get into that a little bit later, I think an album like this is about 5 years overdue. I think Eminem had the lyrical capabilities of taking anybody's heads off, but for whatever reason, he was holding back. But I think this time around, some of the critics have spanked him. And this is something Sin brought up a little bit earlier about the critics when it comes to Eminem. So let's go ahead and get off into this thing. Miss Sincere Ignorant, how did you feel about this album from the jump, Shouty?
I thought it was a really good album, and I'm gonna continue to dissect it and to speak on the countless talking points we have. Again, I just want to let everybody know that we don't take back what we said about Revival. Eminem can have his hissy fits all he want, even though it was a really good hissy fit on Kamikaze. But Revival was shit. It was trash. It was dog doo-doo. And that's why the critics spank it. And I also think we should give the critics and a lot of the alternative media some credit because of the constructive criticism towards Revival. And just being honest, it was a shitty album. It did help push Eminem to actually create an album that they thought they were going to get with Revival. So I want to thank Thought Crimes, Joe Budden, and everybody else who shitted on the album or the track list or whatever. Good job.
Yeah, absolutely. 152% add 48 more. We're going to keep that 200% gangster. I'd like to go ahead and give a round of applause to the both cheeks on Academic's face. I want to give a round of applause to the Joe Buddens. I want to give a round of applause to all the people who said, man, I'm going to drag this out. Even the illiterate mumbling ass rappers who came out the side of their neck after somebody like Eminem. And you know what I think what happened here, Sin? This is my personal thought on the album, because you know the album was a surprise drop for a lot of people. So I was like, hey man, I'm at this point where I'm moving forward with Eminem. Look, he makes music for his base and there's a certain sound, but when I listen to the album, I actually know there are tracks on here that I will not skip over, even if I happen to listen to it in the future. Even some of his other joints that play more towards like radio singles, a little bit like with the, you know, the joking about the lover quarrel and things like that, they're still
normal.
Yeah, still classic humor in the sense of Eminem. But I will say is that he definitely jumped in here and he got things started, and he took a lot of that One Republic sound, as you brought up, some of that kind of weird retro Coldplay-ish type sound that I don't, just keep the redhead Ed Sheeran Chucky boy up off the tracks. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the nuanced critiques of this album where we enjoyed. But yes, I will agree, the critics pushed him to get to this point to deliver this album, because I don't think Eminem had been engaged with social media like that until this time around. I think he really got spanked after Revival.
I agree. I think actually becoming in tune with new media revived his spirits and revived the tenacity lyrically that people were waiting for. You know, let's actually go into the track list right now. Let's go into The Ringer. Now, The Ringer was pretty meaty. You know, he was dissing all the littles. He said he wasn't really a fan of Yachty. He also later, even in the future, we're going to go to some of the later tracks, but he also talked about, you know, the disrespect from some of these littles who can't even rhyme, disrespecting legends like Tupac, Biggie, and those that came before them that created great pieces of artwork pertaining to rap music and hip-hop as a culture. You know, and then he also said, you know, he's tired of the choppy flow that we know Migos created, you know, in popularity mainstream-wise, with the choppy flow that a lot of people have been biting off of. And he also said he's irritated with the Little Pumps. You know, they're just a poor imitation of Lil Wayne. And even though Lil Wayne has participated in colorism and other things that were problematic, for anyone to deny Lil Wayne's talent from the beginning stages all the way up to probably about 2010, you will be in denial. Lil Wayne had a lot of clever lyrics and witty rhymes that his children, his offsprings, do not carry over. And he also talked about those he felt that are doing really great in the game, music that he really do like he loves Kendrick Lamar's music, J. Cole, Joyner Lucas. He basically, threw them a bone about their careers and what he likes about them, and that they're going to be off of his kill list because he enjoys their music. Of course, he went after Trump again, but also wondered if he should have went about going after Trump a different way, since his audience became split, and even some of the people in journalism felt that he was just using this as an opportunity to get into the good graces of other demographics. And again, of course, one of the last things that I'm sure a lot of people are going to bring up about The Ringer, besides the flow and the lyrics being top notch, is Charlamagne diss, which he does throughout the album.
Before we get to that, right, we're going to get to Charlamagne, right? Before we get to Charlamagne the God and what took place there, because Charlamagne of this era, I would say he's at the top of this era of voices of vocal critics against Eminem. He's the most visible. He's basically regurgitating what he sees going on online in the culture. So he's the one that kind of was like, I'm really going to give it to Eminem, right? And Eminem said, basically, I'll use you as an example since you're the voice of the culture, right? Which is fair, right? I think part of the reason why Eminem has been trash in the last several installments in his discography is because the culture arguably has been very soft on him. If you think about music critics from the 90s, if you're talking about from the 80s, even in all spaces, jazz, hip hop, soul, and of course just even rap music in general, much harsher over and undertone, which we kind of saw that segue and go more into stanism coined by Eminem, but also more of a fanboy approach instead of really judging the craft. And I think this the bohemian response and negativity to revival, it put him back in the place he ain't been before, where people were legitimately like, yo, you just trash. But I do want to say regarding to some of the things he opened up with at the beginning, you can clearly tell where the focus and the aim of this album was. At the very least, I've always felt Eminem should have released something along this line like 5 to 7 years ago, right? Because I just felt there's a moment where he's coasting, he's just showing people I can rap, but he complained about not being put in the spaces of the Jay-Z's and the Biggies and the Nas's. But if we actually, deconstruct his legacy in that effect, he didn't put himself out there in that spaces to challenge the real credible MCs, because all those boys sparked up with each other, men and women. So it's interesting, but he did bring up, what happened with Ja Rule. He's be put in that space. I can make that happen again. And to me, I was like, at the very least, just on a nostalgic level, as a battle rapper for him, I enjoyed hearing that aspect of MC and from Eminem, as opposed to a recovery-ish, relapse, revival type Eminem, which I was not a fan of.
Oh yeah, we love the sneak dissing when it first was, really created by Biggie. And then we saw it explored even more so with Jay-Z, and then we've grown tired of it now in the Drake era. It's like now people want to go back to Tupac, in your face, who you like, who you don't like, who you agree with, who you don't agree with. So I know a lot of people are really feeling this too, because now they have the in your face again, not the sneak dissing, which again people have grown very tired of. And another thing that you brought up that I think is important, he's finally trying to say that I am part of the culture, whether you want me here or not, which we'll get more into that, because you can see it's a reoccurring theme within this surprise album that he keeps bringing up. And Prince and I have had our issues also with him within the culture, things that we felt he's done that was crappy. But then if you look at most of them. They all carry their own baggage, like we said, Lil Wayne colorism, some things with sexism with a lot of the rappers and so on and so forth, which also includes Eminem. So they all have their baggage actually that, has been dissected from the public. But again, when you also brought up the critics being too easy on him previously, I agree. I thought during the relapse, even though they weren't fond of the album, because they didn't act like it was a good album, but they still was kind of too lenient at the same time, which I also felt with Revival. It felt good. Actually the way that Eminem was critiqued on this album, except for some of the lyrics where I do agree with him. Some people weren't a part of the culture, so they was trying to say some of the rhymes he said was stupid, but it really wasn't. So I could get him defending his lyrics. But overall, outside of that, I do agree with the critics. I felt they should expand to the Pumps, to the Yachties. Those albums, those artists, if you want to even call them that, because I don't even want to call them that. If we were talking about 1992, they would have got destroyed, and rightfully so.
I don't even think they would have been able to make it. Like, think of their version of a Soulja Boy, which was a cat like Special Ed or Kwame and the Polka Dots. Like, goofy for what they represented, but then not when you listen. At the very least, it was like, it's a good slice of cake. I got something out of it. These GMO motherfuckers, half of them I didn't get, but what I did like though is that because of people still giving him a GOAT title after he dropped duds like Relapse and some other ones in between as well, I think because of the change in the scope of the social media landscape, you had new voices that came out, the academics and some of the other cats, and the Charlamanges are now in a position where their voices are heard more. The social media landscape and the response to someone like Eminem is different compared to, I remember when Relapse dropped, I remember certain rappers said they just wasn't feeling it, but you didn't have the rants and the voices that said this is trash. Like Revival, I think also in Revival, Eminem tried to, like we talked about it, put on To Pimp a Butterfly. He tried to get really, really political about it, which he didn't really have to, because his music has always been politically charged at some point in time. Just contextually, it depends on where you're looking at it from. But when he really jumped in there, did the freestyle on the BET Awards, and that's an awfully hot coffee pot, and people was like, yo, what's going on? So he got washed. Like, he got washed on a whole nother level that I don't think he had felt in a long time. So I think this time here, and some people may disagree with me, but I think this is his 444. This is his album based on who he is, the aesthetics of his lyricism and his, I'm not saying it's in the same space if that's your style, but I'm saying this is his quote unquote truth album for him. Even when he says, I deserve to be in the culture. Like, I'm gonna fight for my spot. I hear all this shit, and we're gonna talk about that.
And we've been a part of that too.
Yeah.
even though he didn't mention our names, we've been talking shit about him and the quality of work he was putting out. But this one is actually a good project. But no, you made me laugh because we made fun of his freestyle. That's an awfully hot coffee pot. Mm-hmm. We made fun of it also with our audience, and we had people who enjoy our commentary who really disagreed with us. They felt we wasn't giving Eminem his fair share, like, being fair to him as an artist. But again, everyone knows that if they've been listening to us since the beginning, we don't hold anything back when it comes to music. Actually, it's I'm not gonna say we're hard to please, because we can actually explain anybody. We can dissect any artist, even a Future. Where the roots come from, why this person, the sound of trap and all that. But at the same time, we still have a system. We still have classic albums that other people have to compete with. And if you're competing against those classic albums and those legendary artists, you can't come half-assed. Now, that people would consider Eminem to be a legend, and I'm not a hater. I would not take that away from him, because he is. But in our critiques, we said on if you had to rate him and compare him to other legends in the game, he would probably be in the middle of the stack, pertaining to his body of work. And there are a lot more artists who have better classic albums that have stood the test of time, and they're more quantity of quality albums from certain people. Like even Nas, I know his catalog is controversial, but still way more classics than an Eminem.
Well, I want you to pause on that. I think at this point in time, once everything has grown, Nas's albums, his body of work has aged much better than Eminem. Look, I don't take anything back. If I thought something was shitty, it was shitty. Relapse, not like the Eminem show. But when I heard Revival, I will honestly say I felt Relapse is better than Revival. But that being said, if we look at somebody like Nas's discography, I mean, even the dud that people kind of got on him about, Nostradamus, you can easily go back and listen to it, and it has a lot of classic aesthetics to it. With Eminem, one thing he said in a tweet regarding this Kamikaze album, he says, "Here's my album, try not to overthink it." And I think because the way Eminem's brain is wired and how it works, you know, also post drugs as well, and him trying to recapture a certain spark he had when he was under certain influences where people felt he was at his peak. I think a lot of times, even with Revival, it was clear he was overthinking it. There was certain things he was trying to go, and there was a lot of incomplete themes on Revival that I wasn't feeling.
I agree with you. And I think he found that light on this album, actually. Whatever in the past flaws that he made musically and artistically, I think he did find it in this album. Let's go to the second track, Greatest. What I did like about Greatest is for him and his perspective, even though we defended the journalists and the commentators on this one because they are the ones that put a light under his ass, which was needed because he did feel too comfortable saying he was the greatest with having flop after flop artistically. Even though he also said he it was funny because on Greatest he said he needs to raise the ceiling if even though you're selling well, the critics still consider you a failure. He said he's gonna go to another level and basically just shred everybody in the meat grinder. Although I would have to say to him, if he's listening, sales don't mean anything when it comes to classic albums. So even though you are an artist that will always sell, you needed this album that you put out to prove again why you should be a contender, because your previous albums was actually you putting you in the top 100, top 50s, just being honest. Other things I liked though is for him, he said he's emotional about it. I like that he's honest with that because some artists lie and pretend that they're not emotional about their craft, but they are. So that's why he said even if the journalists or the critics really have, what one would say reasonable criticisms, he's still going to go after them just because. And also he feels that certain people shouldn't even be coming after him. He feels if you're not a lyricist, if you're not an artist, if you're not a rapper, then your criticisms doesn't hold as much weight, although I will beg to differ because of the tone of this album. And he got a bit petty, but in a way that works very well for him.
Yeah, even with the sales, right? I mean, even some of the heroes he looked up to, but you never sold 2 million, 3 million records, but M would consider him a classic lyricist. There's a lot of classic albums. I mean, Illmatic took a long time to even crack gold, let alone platinum. Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt the first time around took forever to even crack platinum. It wasn't a commercial success coming out the gate. That being said, though, I think this is a situation on Greatest where when I hear him say, I am the greatest or I'm among the greatest, I hear an energy in his voice that I didn't hear on Rap God. Rap God, it was like, I know how to flick some syllables, multi-syllabic wordplay. I know how to do, my scheme. But this time around, it's like he's fighting tone. And I really believe, I'm going to always bring up this situation, keep bringing it up to some of you M Dust heads who was crying. Revival, if Eminem would have left on the note of Revival. That would have really and any argument used against him, you know, to take him out and say, hey man, you can't even be in top 50, it would be a reasonable argument, because they can always say, well, look at this is the last note he left everything on, this damn album here. A Revival was not a good album. That being said, though, Kamikaze has an opportunity, if he chooses to leave his mark as it is right now, at least he leaves on a solid footnote.
Yeah, and again, like you said, it took for Illmatic to reach Diamond. It took a while. So, you know, that whole thing about, you know, you took 10 years to get to 10 million for some of you. You said you hit this or that. It didn't take that from me. But again, when it comes to classic and quality music, it's not about the sales. Otherwise, Bieber will be the greatest pop star that ever lived, or one of the. Even though technically Michael Jackson tops that no matter what. But moving forward, is there something else that you wanted to say pertaining to the greatest track, or did you want to Lucky You featuring Joyner Lucas?
Oh yeah, definitely want to get into that track there. But another thing he was speaking to about greatest was the quantity over quality. He says, you know, some of these artists basically releasing albums over and over again. So, you know, what does it matter that you sold 10 million records? You released 10 million albums, so you should be there. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a good look for Shady. Also, though, the Joyner Lucas track, I will say, outside of Royce da 5'9", staccato-wise, flow-wise, rhyme scheme, Tech 9, I had to put Tech 9 in there. I think Joyner Lucas was one of the ones that says I'm marching in step with this boy on this track. Like, he was keeping up, and he had a nice solid verse. And you could tell when Eminem knows that this guy, whoever's on the track with him, is keeping up, because on the last verse, Eminem always takes it up. He always turns it up. So I thought it was a nice synergy between the two.
I will say that they need to do a whole. They had a really nice chemistry, you know. And one of the downfalls with Jonah and with Eminem is sometimes they could be cheesy and a little bit corny. I will have to say they both brought their A game, and they sounded really good together, really good, you know. And then, but it was so funny because they both had something to fight for, and you heard it in the track. For Jonah, he knows, you know, he's a really good rapper. Everybody says lyrically he's a beast, but he feels like he hasn't gotten his seat at the table. He hasn't gotten his plate, and he feels like all the littles and other people who he feels probably is undeserving when it comes to the artistic sense is taking too much of the pie. So you hear him fighting and his frustration. Then with Eminem, you know, to a degree, he's in history. He's in music history. He's someone who's already made it. He's someone who already has a lot of awards. And even with his misstep with Revival, and from the top 10, people would still mention, but his fight is different from Joyner's. His fight is, I am a part of the culture, even though I'm white, and I should be in the top 10 with the Tupacs and the Biggies and the Jay-Z's and the Nods and so on and so forth, which again is up to the culture about how they feel about that in his body of work. But you felt the energy and the chemistry.
Yeah, you know, and see, that's my gripe with somebody like J. Cole. You know, and I know some people, they're gonna be like, oh man, why you bringing J. Cole in there? I said, let's put one of his locks on the chopping block. I remember when I heard 1985, because online I heard everybody crying about, oh my God, J. Cole went in. Now don't get me wrong, as far as flow scheme, wordplay, vocal inflection, I think J. Cole is a very good rapper. So I'm thinking, okay, well maybe he went in, maybe he called some names, because I'm seeing all the littles respond. I'm like, well maybe J. Cole, if he wanted to, he can play off that. But then when I listened to it, this is all right. I mean, but it spoke to me how sensitive this era is when it comes to possible competition, that they perceived that 1985 track as a diss record. I think somebody like Joyner Lucas, if you were to switch them two out and put it there, and no matter how much fame Joyner would have acquired, how many times he went double platinum, I will say this about Joyner Lucas. I agree with you at times. He can come off kind of stand rap like Hop Sin and sometimes corny. I just feel like he's a much better version of Hop Sin. I always felt like that. I think Hop Sin, some of his work, it was just too corny. It was too cornballish for me at times. But I do believe what I see the difference, and even to some degree with Hop Sin, but with Joyner Lucas, they come from a different cloth in rap music where they enjoy the trolling nature, you know, because Eminem is a troll king as well. And I think that spirit in Joyner Lucas, if you were to put him in the step of a 1985 track, I think it would have been much harsher for a lot of them guys if they were just simply crying about J. Cole. I think Joyner Lucas would have done worse.
I agree with most of your commentary, but I'm just gonna change it just slightly. I agree with you about Eminem because he won't backpedal. I think because Joyner and J. Cole are new school, they backpedal. So Joyner backpedal with Lil Pump, and of course we saw J. Cole backpedal with Lil Pump and the Littles. If people pay attention, Jay-Z didn't backpedal from 444, and I'm sure Eminem won't be backpedaling from this album. So it does shows, like you said, the part I agree with you 100% is where you said there's a different in the generations where Jay-Z and Eminem more than likely, well, we already saw Jay-Z didn't step away from his criticism of the culture during his 444 album, and I'm sure Eminem is not going to step away from this.
Yeah, real quick, because it's like it's part of my agitation, you know. I mean, and I don't even think it's not even an old man complex or old woman complex, because there's folks 17, 16 that they don't like this energy. They don't like to go on Blues Clues hunts and lyrics all the time. You know, like Jay-Z was different because he's the one guy doing it, right? And you have other rappers that will be slick and do it back to him, i.e. Joe Budden, which I can't wait to get into that part, right? But, you know, this era here, it is a backtracking mentality, you know, and I like the fact that Eminem called out some of these younger artists who felt comfortable, and I think they've done it out of sense of a privilege where they felt Eminem's not paying attention. He's old, he's washed up, he ain't gonna say my name. They don't feel he's a threat, and I think this time around, Eminem was trying to remind. I felt he's successful there. He reminded everybody, like, do not get it twisted. Even though I rhyme, I am still a threat. And when he starts shooting in a different age demographic, I think he's letting everybody know, like, this is what I do.
No, I agree 100%. It's just like, you know, how dare you? You're not even on my level. You know, and anyone can use that to any type of career. You know, let's say you're an animator. Let's say, for example, Aretha Franklin. Icon, legend, a great writer, a great singer. And when it came to the next generations, like the Lauryn Hills and the Faith Evans and some of the other Emil that she saw, Brandy, she welcomed them because she thought they were highly talented, but they also respected her at the same time. But just imagine if a Britney Spears, and again, just imagine if a Britney Spears came up, you know, yapping at Aretha Franklin. It would not have settled well with her, and she would have made that known to the world, you know. And so I do think there has to be a level of respect to the craft and the craftsmanship. You know, of course, you could do your own thing. People like party songs. There's a place for everybody. There's even a place for Yachty, even though I think his music is crap. But don't get jealous and attack people because they're using the same criteria that they should towards you pertaining to music structure. It's just like party music. Not all party music is the same. Daft Punk and other artists are rated much higher than a Yachty or Pump. Why? Not because people are being biased, because one person shows a higher level of craftsmanship and artistic ability, and another party is barely scraping by.
You know, it's like this. It's no secret, and I tell people all the time. I even did a short video on Prince Solomon, or I Am Prince Solomon, about, I think it was the 11th anniversary of the Eminem show, and I did a narration piece about the album. Like, I thought it was his best work. I mean, I know other people may go to other joints, but I felt that was his best cohesive, collective album that I felt as an MC he was mature. I didn't hear Britney Spears, Christian. I had no interest of hearing how. I wouldn't have been interested if Redman did it or Busta Rhymes did it. I just don't bring those people into my space where I feel like I have to pay attention to them. But ever since then, I felt he's always just been off, and I think in this culture right now, what I do like though on this album, Kamikaze, he made me a fan in the sense of I felt like I was listening to the Eminem show, because I felt like he had an aggression about him that I think he's been passé on. I think he was so busy trying to perform circus and theatrics in front of people when it came to his wordplay. Like, look, here's a ring of fire lyrically. Let the shark jump through here. Look, here's an elephant on top of a basketball. Like, and people would go like, and they felt comfortable disrespecting him too as well. And I have said this over and over and over again. I says if anybody has any other tools to just cause a massive lyrical bloodbath in hip hop just for the fuck of it, and the fact that he's white on top of it, let it be Eminem. That's what I always felt, and I've always felt as a rapper. Part of the reason why people felt comfortable dismissing him from the culture, because I don't think Eminem was being honest with himself as well. Because some of the heroes, like, all right, Nas said on Ether, to Jay-Z, Eminem out-rapped you on your own track, right? But then at the same time, Nas never got in the booth to stand next to Eminem for the fans to say, yo, I think Eminem out-rapped Nas on his own track. You know what I mean? I mean, he got to produce a track for Nas on Godson, which was okay. But I think in this space, I think Eminem is at a point now where he understands, like, if I don't pronounce my presence, like, just let me take off a few heads, some relevant heads, they have the potential of trying to wipe me from hip-hop history, which if he continued on this passe charge with these horrible releases, it could have happened.
Yeah, because, Eminem is not the only one who could just put words together and make it sound really dope. Black Alicious, Papoose, there's a lot of them elite MCs that could do that. What else do you have? I mean, the thing that makes Black Thought crazy is that he could do that, but then there's a context of a whole story. What you have with this album that Eminem did, he was finally able to combine the two. Because usually he gives you one or the other. On his Booger Flickin' Marshall Mathers LP, it was a lot of chakra stuff. He had some good singles, but I feel personally it didn't date well. And then also with the Slim Shady LP, and also his Infinite album, actually, which I thought the Infinite album was not bad at all, but it sounded like a bootleg imitation of an AZ to me. The Eminem Show is when I've truly felt he found himself as an MC in this culture, where we saw that he not only had good concepts, not only he can rap, but we can see an air of maturity and also see his product, his work actually age well. And then after that, it was just dud after dud after dud again, until this album.
Yeah, because like people don't understand this. It's like I had posed a question here on Thought Crimes. I said, when we're talking about greatest, what are we talking about? Are we talking about him having dope moments? Because to be honest with you, Method Man has a lot of great moments, but his discography is trash as a solo artist. With the Wu-Tang, it's another story. He had his first debut discography, classic. 4321, I think it was a solid album. But if you go follow Method Man as a solo artist, it don't look all that hot, but you can't discount his presence and his legendary status of what he means. So some people may argue he's the greatest when they say they're talking about the moments he gives them, those hot verses where 9 times out of 10, if Method Man gets on the track with you, he's going to outshine you on some level, right? Say with the like of, the only one that can one-up him is a Redman, right? When they get together, that's why they work off each other. But when people were arguing about like Eminem is the greatest, but I was like, okay, well, I mean, if we're talking about like words, yeah. I mean, he puts words together well, as you brought up. Black Thought, Black Alacious, Big Pun. We can go through those type of multi-syllable rappers. It's Tech Nine. I mean, God, he's one of the best to have done it, right? But then I said, for what they're claiming, if I sit his discography against some other guys in hip hop, ooh, we got a problem. We got Encore, we got Recovery, we got Relapse, we got Revival, and then even the albums that they're holding on to, or the one album they're really holding on to, the Marshall Mathers LP, it didn't age well. You know, and the Infinite album, to your point, yes, I like the Infinite album as an underground joint, but I think with this one, he needed an album like this. It needed to be a mature, honest album, and like I said, this is his mature album. This is his Clint Eastwood album. You know, it's like Jay-Z's 44 album, 444. That was his Clint Eastwood. That was his Gran Torino album. This is his Gran Torino album as well. So he needed a Clint Eastwood album in his deck, and I felt like it was the old head to some degree going in and spanking on some disruptive youngins too.
Outside of the Eminem show, this is the first album he has created where he talks shit about people, and it wasn't corny or fake edgy. When he talked about NSYNC and Britney Spears, and even his excuse of wanting to create a separation from them, that's why he went after them. Although he could have went about it in a better, more hip-hop-ish way. Corny. When he did the whole Amy Winehouse and Kim Kardashian joints and stuff, trash. And I'm just being honest, all that booger flicking, going after those type of people, I always thought it hurt him, and I thought it was corny. But this is the first time he's just dissed a bunch of people that actually mattered, whether you like them or not. That actually has a direct connection to the culture, whether you like them or not. All those other people, Britney Spears and all that, those people weren't a part of the culture, so every time you dissed them, you just came off looking more corny.
You know what this made me feel like? Because when you brought up that, right, and, you know, we thought about the Eminem show, which is an album that even on my spare time, I'll just randomly listen to. That'll be the only album I'll sit through in his discography. Like, I can't do the other stuff. Encore had a few okay joints, but it was really weird. I think he was going through a lot. But this album, Kamikaze, and believe it or not, the 8 Mile soundtrack, right? Those are the only 3 bodies of works where he's not coming off corny because his targets aren't corny. His targets mean something. That's what I'm saying with Eminem. Like, he irritated me for a different reason. He was already a spotted leopard in hip hop. You're a bleached, blonde-headed white boy running around with white tees on, and you got this kind of Freddie Got Fingered music, and you got this fan base where you're outselling Jigga, you're outselling the DMX, you're outselling the Ja Rule. So the guys kind of walled you off in a different space because they looked at your target. You're targeting Will Smith, 98 Degrees, Old Town. Those 3 bodies of works, Eminem show, 8 Mile, and then this joint, look at all of his targets. They were worthy opponents. They meant something. All that other shit, all them other them J14 motherfuckers didn't mean anything, which is why you can't find no grown-ass man that feels he's cool that's riding around to the Marshall Mathers LP and saying, I'm listening to this track for track for track. I think on this one, on Kamikaze, all of his targets meant something.
Let's move over to track 4, which is just a skit of Paul. Do you think it's a good thing that Eminem didn't listen to Rosenberg's opinion?
Oh yeah, I will say this: their dynamic between each other, it's fun. It's very humorous. So it's a lot of comedy between them two. And I don't think if he's been listening to Paul all this time for the last 3 or 4 releases, then him not listening to him is the best move he's made.
Let's move over to the track Normal, which is his relationship issues, more than likely about Kim. He's been off and on again with her for, we could say, probably a decade now. Even, the track he did with Rihanna about 5 years ago was about her. He's wondering, he keeps asking in the song, why can't you just be normal? While at the same time, hinting to the fact that he may not be normal himself. Maybe he can't function in a regular relationship where there's a healthy showing of love. with Kim and him is always a disturbing level of obsession, jealousy, domestic violence on both parties, drugs, so on and so forth.
I think this Kamikaze album is pretty much offering many of the things we've heard from Eminem before, but it's like I said, I think this is his mature version. This is a Clint Eastwood. What I got from the record, if this is, confirmed to be Kim, because we'll find out later. But I think he's also looking in a situation where when you got him on the Marshall Mathers LP, he was in the moment. He was angry. He was, bitch, I want to put you in the trunk. I want to cut you up. I want to drive you off the cliff. All of that type of stuff. So he's in the moment. He's youthful. He's like 22 or some shit like that, or whatever the case is. But I think in this one, when I heard the track, I think there's almost a sense of mortality there as well, because it's kind of like, I just wish you would have been normal because we wasted so much time. We could have been something else. And sometimes when people are locked in with someone and there's always that level of intensity that they had with the fight and the violence and things like that, some people stay in there, or they stay in it too long, but then they look back, they still have a different type of longing or a puzzled bewilderment, like, hey, why couldn't you have just been normal?
You think he's gonna die still being in love with her?
It's been done before. It's happened before. I don't know. I know it's not so much in his system like it was before when he was, putting out that other material. And I think a lot of this too has to do with him reuniting with his mother, because that may have released a lot of things. Because I remember now, he was very vitriolic towards his mother, and then boom, turn around, his girl got it too. You know what I'm saying?
I think he is gonna go to his grave still being in love with her. I mean, every album, there's not one album when he doesn't mention her. Even in this album, still mentioning her. I think even though she's an addict, even though she's cheated on him and vice versa, he cannot get her out of his system.
It's because he's longing for a sense of normalcy. Everything about Eminem is bizarre. Everything, and that's no pun intended, but everything about Eminem is bizarre, so nothing is normal. So for somebody like that, he may just be longing for a normal relationship, someone that got his back or that he feel he can trust, you know what I'm saying? But sometimes we put our eggs in the frying pan when we're trying to put them in a basket.
But that's the thing, I mean, I don't even feel that he's trying to find that with somebody else. It's just he wants her to be fixed. But of course, that's can't be done.
I think he's alluded to his dating experiences a little later into this album, both songs back to back, and he was talking about how he wasn't really feeling them. It's just, so that could possibly, be the B-side to what he's experiencing here on this one.
No, of course. I do think he was, in general, just saying he's just not good with relationship. All of his relationships seems to end up the same way. But then still the main course of it was still about Kim, though. Still going back to her. And we'll see if he, creates an album where she's not a topic of discussion. But he's been with her for a really long time, off and on, and they produced a child together. So I don't completely done with her.
Yeah, you remember he's been killing Kim since '97. Shit, you know what I'm saying? So, hey,
Track 6, Eminem calls Rosenberg fucking around, saying he's gonna look for this Yahoo commentator in Michigan. Sounds like an old Eminem in that one.
Man, let me tell you something, y'all. This sounded like an old Eminem updated, and he's reacting to social media. You take the Eminem that we got from the Eminem show, and even his energy on Marshall Mathers. Like I said, it's not one of my favorite hip-hop albums, but his energy nonetheless was there. His humor, all of that. But now he's in a situation where it's been updated to social media. So I actually, quote unquote, I did laugh. It made me snicker, like chuckle, like, ha, that's funny. He's looking for motherfuckers online. You know what I'm saying? And you would imagine somebody with that type of energy from still just as much of a product of the 90s as a Howard Stern. You know what I'm saying? So you put him in this space, instead of doing what Howard did, where he said podcasting was for amateurs, like he wasn't for podcasting, he just thought it was beneath him. Eminem, on the other hand, as a kept moving in from the 90s, the late 90s, is like, I want to look for this motherfucker.
moving on to another track, 7, Stepping Stone, which talks about the divorce of D12, how he was also very public in his music about the death of Proof. But now he cleared the air for everyone of why D12 is officially over. And for him, he probably feels emotionally he can't go back without Proof. He also feels the chemistry with all the guys are not the same. And he's conflicted. He feels the pressure for him to keep D12 afloat, was unfair to him, especially with the psychological issues he was dealing with. Also, he probably felt the guys should have did more to be able to create connections on their own as well as individual NCs.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was actually more intrigued with that story, like, because D12, everybody saw them and then they didn't see them anymore. We understood what happened with Proof, who I felt was a underrated MC. His Searching for Garcia album is a dope-ass album. But Eminem said once the soul of the group died, the energy was different because that was basically Proof's group. He was the soul of the group, and Eminem was brought into D12. A lot of people think he started D12. He was at the beginning. They had another cat named Bugs who got killed off early, and was a dope lyricist as well. But Eminem was brought into the group by way of Proof. So they were all introduced to each other and developed a camaraderie, but the camaraderie between Proof and Eminem was always closer because of certain situations. As I listened into the song in itself, which I think is a standout cut on the album, I think that Eminem, what I got from it, he looked like he just got tired of carrying dead weight.
Do you feel he could have done more for D12?
He said something that was interesting. He said if they would have politicked D12 or parlayed them more towards BET audience, or maybe try to get them in line with some other rappers in the industry, that maybe it would have helped them. I understood what he was saying, but I always would have said no, because Eminem's material, the type of material he was making at the time, many black rappers, quote unquote black rappers, like they understood he sold, records, but it was always kind of like when they would bring him up, it was like a very disregarding energy at certain award shows. And I think D12 kind of had like a unfortunate mark put on them as well, because people in the industry had labeled them house stand behind, quote unquote, the white boy. And what he has y'all doing on stage, they kind of tried to feel that they were cooning, and there was a lot of people disrespecting D12 just as on their own as MCs. Proof was very vocal about it, what I'm saying? So that's why you kind of saw them hover in more of the MTV space, where that crowd was already accepting of Eminem, but also they can kind of make their money. But when you take out somebody like Proof, Eminem had to come back from battling all that other shit. D12 as a standalone artist is, how can you really sell them based on the trajectory it's going? Because Bizarre be saying some fucked up shit. Not that, Biggie hasn't, but, the way they were trying to advertise themselves, I just think they didn't know how to market themselves beyond Eminem, and they tried to still keep that Eminem my band energy. But I think also what I got from the record, not to extend this any further, it sounded like Eminem was tired of carrying quote unquote dead weight, because he says it at the end of the song.
Well, it was brought on themselves. We heard the tapes that Eminem, calling black people moon cricket. And I know some people may say, well, Dark Crimes, aren't you a hypocrite? You call white people mayo and you have names for them. Well, that's up for everyone to decide for themselves. But what I will say is this, is that for that time, for the culture that we're in, and him being an outsider was harder, like you said, for people to let him in, especially with the history of black music, jazz, blues, so on and so forth. What the labels did, what a lot of white execs did, that they did judge them harsher at that particular time. Even though, again, we talked about colorism, we talked about Rick Ross, you didn't even know it, even though he did lose his Reebok still. But for a lot of people, is worse if someone outside the culture is found to partake in colorism or to have said racist stuff. And Eminem did go after black women, and he did call black people moon crickets in those tapes that were put out by Benzino, you know, when he put out those tapes. And again, it's a weird dynamic to be put in, especially when I don't even know what to say. I know how I feel about the tapes. We talk about it all the time, and we feel that people shouldn't be coming into the culture being disrespectful. And one can say, well, we calling people's name is doesn't matter because we're not trying to go up into a white people's space like that culturally and be like, hey, what's up, crackers?
Well, I'll walk wherever I want to walk. You know, if I said cracker, nigga, whatever the case is, I'll walk wherever I want to walk. What I don't like is cowards, you know, so it's own up to what you said, you know. And I think at the time when the whole Moon Cricket shit broke, Eminem just looked shook. Even when he did the Yellow Brick Road song and he was trying to explain what happened, that's a cockamamie story. I was like, if that shit is even true, this phantom black woman, the girl that broke your heart, and then you went on a nigger spree after that on some Kramer shit, it is what it is. But what I will say is that even before the tapes were released, D12 was getting judged very harsh, because I even remember around my way how guys spoke about them. I remember the Steve Harvey jokes. They were talking about, oh, you mean the niggas that hang upside down and dress like mermaids? But I think it was because of their affiliation, their attachment to Eminem, because we've had Busta Rhymes and Redman, all those guys do those things, but it was always in their own space. And I think for them to have hitched their wagon to Eminem, like I said, they were catching a lot of that. So for them to try to be marketed as standalone artists, Kaniva, Swifty, McVeigh, and Bizarre and all them, it just didn't take. And I also don't think their music appealed to a lot of people on their own either.
They didn't stand on their own, and they put everything on the white boy. You should have went out and did your own thing, like Redman and other people did. You saw even when Royce and Eminem was going at each other, Royce was building up his own thing, even though eventually they became friends again and they moved forward and they still have a really good relationship. But you can't rely on one person. You got to get out there and make it happen for yourself.
That's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up, because the only reason why Royce's ass is even here today, I followed that motherfucker for a long time. And I remember when he got booted because of some shit he said in an interview, and Dr. Dre got offended. And then boom, you know, him and Eminem fell out. And then there was the D12 shit, which y'all should check out, the D12 versus Royce da 5'9". Royce cut their asses up, right? But it was a good diss. But Royce, even while he was dissing them, he told them at the time, I'm creating my own space. What y'all doing? He said, because when it's all set, they gonna fall in my pocket. And Royce had said this like over 10 years ago to them niggas, you know. And Royce fought. He went on an underground mixtape circuit. He released a Bar Exam, which became a credited series as well. And he was able to build something off of that, which is why he's standing today.
And it became true. Everything that was said 10 years ago, it happened, and it came true. Unfortunately, with the death of Proof. Now moving on to track 8. Not Alike, featuring Royce da 5'9". We know it's a bit of a cheek and tongue. It's a play on Black Boy and Drake song, if you listen to the instrumental. But he really focuses on really getting into Machine Gun Kelly, dissing him, saying we're nothing alike, you're whack, you're corny, I'm a staple in the culture, you're not, you can only wish to be like me. And then he was saying Kelly almost if he was like trying to hint to like R. Kelly, like, you know, why are you looking at my daughter? Why do you keep mentioning her? And then he also threw Diddy in there. He said, you know, I'll make your career disappear. What do you think about that?
Well, again, it's him flexing. It's him focusing on targets that need to be shot. I'm just being real with you. Like I said, I'll say it again. My biggest gripe with Eminem, bro, why are you shooting at pillows? You know? And I think in this situation too, because of the changing landscape demographically within hip-hop and generationally as well, the intergenerational shift, I think Machine Gun Kelly was one of those newbies who lyrically could not fuck with Eminem, but felt comfortable trying to put his baby nuts on Eminem's head.
We shouldn't be surprised too. You know, it's so kind of funny because in that track he mentions LeBron James, you know, shouting him out, giving him a bigs up. But Machine Gun Kelly has always been a fool. I mean, he went after LeBron James when LeBron went to Miami, talking very reckless about LeBron James and how he was a coward and all this other nonsense.
Well, yeah, and the thing, never liked Machine Gun Kelly. I enjoy Yellow Wolf's music much better. If we gotta talk about white boys in hip hop, Yellow Wolf made much better music than I felt Machine Gun Kelly. Machine Gun Kelly was a arrogant dude who I believe was originally a model. And he wanted to rap like all motherfuckers do. He just had the opportunity to do so. He caught a break. And he was the inverse of what Waka Flocka was. He was, at the time when Waka Flocka was on his "Oh Let's Do It" kick, they were trying to market him against Waka Flocka in the sense of they got the same energy, but this is a white boy, it's a rowdy white boy, rock boy, block boy type dude. And I remember he was bragging in the interview, talking about people can't fuck with me, like, come on, man, I did a record with DMX. This is a correction, you did a record with a crackhead DMX. If we're talking about a sober DMX from the early 2000s, he wouldn't did no fucking song with you. If we talking about a Dame Grease, early Swiss Beats, when Swiss Beats had braids in his hair, he had nigga barbershop braids in his hair, that motherfucker wouldn't cut no track with your dusty ass.
Also, the chat room, settle down. You will be in this conversation in a bit. We will have the phone lines open soon, but we haven't got to the meat of it yet, and that happens towards the end. Let's move forward. And also, by the way, Not Alike is a very great track, and we will be coming back to some of these tracks to have their own videos as well, because I know there's more to be said. But let's go over to Fall. There's a lot of talk about reference tracks, people not writing. Him would never have a ghostwriter because he doesn't believe in their ability to write on the same level as him. He also talks about how it gave him courage, it gave him confidence, and he also said that he sold not because he was white, but his talent. He said, if he really did sell, if he really was an Elvis, if he sold just because he was white, he said, then why didn't that break down the door for other white MCs to sell on the level he did? Because none of them have sold on the level that he did, with, you could say, with the exception of the Beastie Boys and Vanilla Ice. But Vanilla Ice went crashing and burning. Eventually you had black rappers who outsold Vanilla Ice anyway, and also the Beastie Boys. But Eminem was the only one to have the run that he did and the sales that he did.
I liked the track. I still felt like he I don't know, it felt like sometimes he wanted some smoke with Drake, which would be a very easy battle. I mean, damn, that would be like a...
He also defended Drake too. I'm just gonna say this real quick because I know you're about to dissect Fall some more, but if you fast forward to KAMIKAZE, he talked about the industry, when he took shots at Charlamange and them saying, first you go after Jay, then you want to go after Drake, then you want to go after Amigos, now it's me, it's whoever you can get a hit from.
Yeah, he was talking about artists copying styles, and Charlamagne being a vocal participant in the culture, and he was just speaking to an inconsistency, which has always been there. I want to go back to the Fall track, though. I would never say that Eminem only sold records because he's white. I think when some of the people who don't like Eminem, period, I think they really overstep in that lane. Only because he's white, because to his point, that means Machine Gun Kelly should have went double platinum. That means Mac Miller shouldn't be struggling like he's doing with his music career as a white artist. I believe he's a white. But on the flip side with Eminem, I wouldn't go too far in the other direction as well, because you being white does work well with the marketing. Also, it's a contributing factor to your overall package and image and relatability to a core demographic, albeit if it's white or black, right? Because once the Eminem show came out, there was kids that I heard in black space that said they felt the white boy get spit, they felt he got busy, right? And then of course there was white kids that was like, oh man, finally we have a legit one, and the infamous Vanilla Ice joke can get away from our heads, right? Our unique traits will work to our benefits for whatever field we're in. Now, sometimes politics is at play, and sometimes that gets discounted regardless. But it's kind of like, I'll flip it on the reverse. When people in sports or just even in the culture. They don't mention Larry Bird as much as they mention Magic, even though Larry Bird was a far better three-point shooter and has the credentials to back it up, right? If we look at that, though, there's some lesser black players that get mentioned sometimes over Larry Bird because unconsciously, sometimes simply it is because he's white. And then on top of that, he didn't do half of the antics. But then, like I said, there's some mild-mannered, sub-tier white basketball players who get mentioned, I feel, a little bit too much. So for Eminem, I'm 50-50 with him. You know, I don't think he's so completely because he's white. He has bars, he can rap, he can spit. But on the flip side, it also is part of the contributing package of who he is as that particular type of artist, which certain industries tried to emulate, and they tried to spit out a Machine Gun Kelly, which flopped.
Question. This is what he's saying in his favor, and I want to know what you think about it. For him, it's like, if I truly was an Elvis, why couldn't I been here for about 10 years over? Why haven't I been able to open up the... You had Jerry Lewis, you had so many other white artists that came and basically became the face of a genre that black people started. To which, at the time, they also changed the history of it after Elvis, because even though you had some Christian conservative white people who were anti-rock, they said it was nigger music. Eventually, by the 70s, the late 70s, and especially in the 80s, nigger music became white people music, and white people created rock. So the same thing happened to jazz, even though jazz has now been put back in the hands of black people, or black people took it back. But we saw even the first jazz album was by a white group that denied that it was created by black people. With rap music, even though it has a lot of issues with ownership and white execs like Cohen, for example, why haven't Eminem been able to deliver on that? Even though, again, not saying he personally wants that to happen, but why didn't his presence garner to hip-hop as it did with other black expressions of music?
Oh, it's simple, because out of all of the other black expressions of music, rap music and hip-hop is the most overtly politically charged music. I mean, yeah, you had your Muddy Waters, you had your Etta James, Marvin Gaye broke and did What's Going On, you had your Curtis Mayfields, we're going to be talking about Hazel Scott later on, in another subsequent documentary. But, it's nothing like what we saw when you had Poor Righteous Teachers, early Ice Cube, some of the stuff he was espousing that he was able to get away with talking shit about Jewish people for like 3 goddamn albums straight, right? What we saw with early Public Enemy, all right, before the group broke up and did whatever, you have acts like Dead Prez. I think because that spirit is always there on some level, it makes it hard for an Eminem to actually have an Elvis effect, even if that's not his intention. Sometimes Eminem could be like, I'm just being me, but the corporations was like, we're going to try to create this Elvis effect. Doesn't mean that they haven't tried. If you actually chronicle when Eminem comes in and you look at what the corporations were trying to come up with their own versions of Eminem's at times, they just have been unsuccessful. Hip-hop has been very resistant to that idea.
Is it because it's too young still? I mean, you look at R&B. R&B, rhythm and blues have been here for a very long time. Only recently have people like Taylor Swift have been considered R&B, and it's been mostly dominated by white people like Sam Smith and some other artists. But for a very long time, one could say untouched up until now. Do you think it's still a possibility for that to happen to hip-hop?
I don't think the Elvis effect is going to, I think through globalization is where it become destabilized, is what we're seeing right now. I believe they have, what's the guy's name? Kim Woo or something like that. Popular, I believe he's a Japanese artist right now, making some headway. But I smell a Drake template on him. But he's getting all the press coverage. We're seeing what they're pushing for with more of Asian hip hop. I mean, it's always been there. Nuhabes is dope as well, but you always had your dope Asian hip hop. But then you can clearly see where the commercialized Japanese hip hop is coming in. What we're seeing as well, and Eastern European countries as well. I think if an Elvis effect was going to take place in hip hop, and I don't think it's going to be something by way of one person. I think it has more so to do with the constant breaking up of the culture through these subsidiaries and like I said, a negative aspect of globalization.
I think it can happen, and it will, because I think they're gonna follow the blueprint of R&B. I think you change the definition of what R&B is. We went online and we looked at R&B tracks. When I talk about her, she's R&B. Taylor Swift, there were other people. That was not R&B, but it was classified as R&B. Do you think even with Eminem and Jay-Z and the other artists before them, the problem of rap not sounding like rap? I mean, we've heard this note before. Like you listen to Lil Pump. That's not hip hop. That's not rap music. But it's classified as rap. That's a slippery slope. We saw that happen to R&B in the last 5 years, where again, and Sam Smith, or okay, and them, okay, we could say Adele, all right. You can classify some of their tracks as R&B, but now you have people who are 100% that classified as R&B. Do you feel with the Little Pumps though, and the Yachty's and some of these other people that that's the blueprint? Say something that's not hip hop is hip hop.
I think that is already in place because they exist. You know, they exist. It's crazy that this Kamikaze album has actually, made me look at the culture in a way right now, because Eminem is one of those rappers that you and I, for the most part, he's always been around. Like, even if we not fucking with the album that just came out by Eminem when we was younger, we was like, okay, we expect to hear him on somebody's verse that we listen to. But it was always predicated in hovering around bars, even with him and Cannabis, him and some other guys as well in hip hop. It's always been around bars. A lot of this stuff, look, the redefinition and the mumble rap, right? And I understood the value, the aesthetic of it. We're talking about early tracks of John Lee Hooker, where you have mumbling blues, you just harmonizing your emotions. I can't think of the sister's name, where she would be basically mumbling, but she was too much emotion. She was so emotional she couldn't project it and focus it in words. So that was the beauty of it, was capturing her moment of her harmonizing what she felt, right? And some of the rappers had made some cases about that. I said, hey, it is what it is, even though I know the public may feel like, oh man, these motherfuckers don't rap. And it says, I get it. But at the same time, I understand the different branches of music. But then on the flip side, I understand that we live in a corporate state as well. So the problem I had with the whole mumble rap thing, or just biting a different type of flow, is that once you complete and you make it accessible, easy to duplicate, the value of it drops significantly. So when somebody says I can rap, it don't resonate like it used to, because people understand now that the complexities of rap is not as high, and they feel like it's easy, somebody to get in there and bounce around like some of these other guys, which is what I think Eminem was speaking towards as well. Even when he talked about, I was sick of the choppy flow, for him to be able to flip it and point it out shows you the simplicity of what is taking place with rap. So yes, it has been redefined and reinterpreted over and over, which is why we have the Pumps, we have the Little Peeps, and all these other guys as well.
The choppy flow is still hip hop, still rapping. We said that even with Migos. You even hear some people, like, at the same time, even though they're tired of it, people would defend Migos because especially take off rapping. When you have someone like Yachty who's harmonizing, even though he can't sing, but he is, and he says he's not hip hop, but he's included in rap categories, that's very problematic. If you're mumbling it and harmonizing, I don't know how, even in the early stages of hip hop, where it was party music, because some people say it started off political. No, it didn't. It actually started off with party music and just everybody just hanging out. Even when they did, I went to the store. I mean, they're still rapping. You know what I'm saying? And if you take that completely off, and then even people who don't even want to be included in the genre in the first place, I do think it does create a window for someone just like Taylor Swift is being called R&B, even though she's not. It creates atmosphere where someone who's not rap is still being defined as rap?
It's because it's that's at that point it's pimping out the culture. I don't love this hoe. I'm just gonna be in the bed with her. That's what it's called, hip hop, and I'm referencing her in the sense of what Common coined it at the time. You know, that's what his whole dissertation to hip hop was. I used to love her. And he was just speaking to what he saw with the gangsterism that he coined it, but he saw something arising at his vantage point, and that was years ago when he did that, decades ago. When we look at it now, the reason why I did respect XXXTentacion as an artist, you know, there's other things in people's lives, but as an artist, he did say he felt he was bigger than hip hop, but that's because he wanted to express himself in other forms of music. He said he wanted to express himself in rock. He wanted to express himself in, I believe, jazz. He wanted to do spoken. He wanted to do other things, but he was just saying, don't just make me to be a fucking rapper mad at Drake. He was very irritated that people, and I agreed with him. He says, I'm more talented than Drake. I do more things than Drake. And I said, that's cool. But I respected how he owned that and kept walking with that stick. I don't like the Yachties, and I don't like the Uzi Vert. And I tolerate people run around banging the drums. I'm so different. I'm not hip hop. I'm above you niggas. But you right there at the BET Award shows when they're trying to nominate the best rap albums. You're right there at the VMAs trying to get the best rap video. And you go on Instagram and you're mad when you don't win. But you said, I'm not rap. I'm not a hip hop. So yeah, that part is what irks me right now, because we have a very lucid definition, if we have a definition of what rap music or hip hop is.
And that's just that simple, you know. There are albums where it crosses all genres. We saw Lauryn Hill's debut solo album being classified as hip hop, R&B, so on and so forth. It wasn't defined as one thing, and that's fine. There are albums and there are artists that don't neatly fit in a box. Prince is an example of that, and so many other icons in our history. So it either needs to be defined by all the criteria that it fits, or it needs to be defined as not in a one genre, like a Yachty. Like some of his stuff he does, a lot of stuff he does is not even, it doesn't even, you can't even say it's hip hop and this, that, and the third. It really isn't. But I'm not gonna harp on that any longer. Do you want to say anything else about Fall? I mean, one other thing is Eminem did say that he feels like people do want him to fall, and this is why he's fighting back. You know, maybe it's because he feels they want these new guys to become the major figures in hip hop. He doesn't know. He feels also that his legacy may be forgotten, not just because of the things we mentioned earlier, but just because the kids don't give a fuck. He also mentioned that, you know, he looks around and he's like, you know, it was all of us, the biggies and everybody, or they're just gonna forget about all of us and say fuck us and you know, and all these other things, and not to respect the artistry of hip hop.
Yeah, it's because at the center of hip hop, there is a very immature male mentality. I know a lot of guys are going to get mad in the chat, but you'll understand what I'm saying once I break it down. We look at all of the genres. Holiday can exist. You know, I'm sure there's shit she's ran into behind the industry, behind the scenes, but for the most part, they didn't suffocate her artistry just as a woman. We saw it with Lena Horne, right? We've seen it with even with Cicely Tyson. We can go through other genres where actors and actresses can float in and out of music, but also different genders can express themselves as well, right? It's not like that in rap music. So if rap music, hip hop, has a problem, and I'm just gonna say rap, because I think hip hop is all life encompassing. It's like when you saw MC Lyte on the stage as a woman doing her thing, but she's an MC. Rap is, bitch, get on the pole. You know what I'm saying? I'll blow a bag today. Nah, bitch, you just rap about sucking dick. You know, you be a Trina. I'm not saying Trina can't exist, but when you got 13 girls that think to get in the game, they got to be like a cash doll. Shit, that's rap music. That's not hip hop. Hip hop allows for Lauryn Hill to breathe and express everything what she is.
I mean, you had the Chantel's and the Roxannes and all of them early in hip hop, even though there are some men that are very ignorant that think that pop started with just, men and black men in particular. But actually all the genres that have been created have started by both black women and black men. And even though they forget, for example, like with rock and roll music, the origin of that with that new sound started with Rosetta Tharpe, who eventually influenced Chuck Berry and so on and so forth. But it is that arrogance and bravado that is appealing to hip hop though at the same time, but also unappealing how they were able to literally women from the origins of hip hop.
Rap is a refined version of hip hop is what I'm saying. The bravado braggadocio swag showed up in both men and women in hip hop. Shantae sounded just as arrogant as Jay-Z, and she was like a little thing at the time, and she was taking on grown men, and they didn't know what to do with her. They said, well, shit, we got to get somebody else and name her Roxanne, right?
And also, people forget there were a lot of other female MCs at that time that were competing with her. She wasn't the only one. There was a lot of them at that time.
That's hip hop. So the braggadocious, cocky swag has been appealing to both genders in the space of hip hop.
Yeah.
You don't get to breathe like that rap music. So what we have here is a couple generations of hyper and overly commercialized rap. So if the gender dynamic doesn't matter to rap motherfuckers, they damn sure don't care about the names. Don't give a fuck about a Rakim or Biggie Smalls or Lauryn Hill. They don't care. They're like, yo, let me get my money right now. That's their whole thing, which is why you have certain hybrid people in hip hop who did a better amalgamation of both. Jay-Z was a hybrid MC. He was hip hop and rap blended together, and you have these poor man versions of Jay-Z, and even below that you have poor man versions of the T.I.'s, because T.I. degraded down version of a Jay-Z. He gets busy on a mic, but he's a lower tier Jay-Z, and you have lower tier T.I.'s where you get in these spaces where these rappers are saying, I'm not hip hop, I do rock, but you rapping though, you know what I'm saying? So that's why, Eminem might be looking around right now at the landscape, and he's realizing like, damn, they really don't give a fuck.
Yeah, we had an insider. He showed some of the rappers that he worked with, horrible things that were happening in that community, or girls look at it and they're like, whatever, I'm just all about my money. It's interesting, people like that. I always think to some degree they will get a blowback as well when they think, gender, race, other issues that are very problematic, that are plaguing people, economics. When they disregard that, I do think there is a backlash. But if you don't mind, let's go forward to Kamikaze, the track number 10, where he actually goes after a lot of people here. I mean, he goes after Lord Jamar, he goes after Charlamagne, he goes after Joe Budden, he goes after academics. He also says the people he put who are influencing the culture, like Cole, Kendrick, Hopsin. Although I think people are going to get after Eminem for mentioning Hopsin as his seed, even though obviously he's a seed. He's almost an Eminem clone, which is why people criticize him a lot. Royce the 5'9", and also putting out 50 Cent there. He also and he also mentions the whole Elvis thing. What's your whole take on Kamikaze and those he mentioned?
Hold your nuts, Shady. Look, I don't know Eminem personally. I don't know these motherfuckers personally. After the Moon Cricket shit, he genuinely could have been sorry. I know motherfuckers have forgiven rapists in this goddamn culture. You know what I'm saying?
You mean like Mystical?
Yeah. I think, to me personally, I think at this stage, after he's gotten everything out the way, I think Eminem should hold his nuts just like any other MC. Like I said, the part of me that I enjoy seeing is that's why the whole Tupac energy was so appealing to folks. But I always thought Eminem never went far enough because he had the opportunity. Because other rappers already spoke about him kind of in a scary sense, like they understood that he was they just didn't want to fuck, man, can I work with you, or I give props to you, but they never wanted to charge at him like they felt comfortable going after Jay-Z, you know what I'm saying? So when he said that, it reminded me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine a long time ago. He felt that Eminem was never a part of hip hop. Like he doesn't contribute anything. And I said, well, I don't know what your definition is, because I mean, he's obviously brought in a lot of acts, and I'm sure he's motivated a lot of guys. Kamar is, you know, on record saying I was inspired by Eminem. You see the joint of Lucas. There wouldn't be no 50 Cent if it was not for Eminem listening to his mixtape, because Dre sure as fuck wasn't listening to it. You know, he was trying to find the next knockoff Snoop Dogg nigga. You know what I mean? So I think Eminem should mention more of those things, what he brought to the table, because maybe that will help with the narration of his career.
It sounds like he wants to fight. It sounds like even if you go back to the first track where he glorifies Kendrick and Cole and Joyner, it seems like he wants a battle in hip hop where he really wants to lyrically destroy all of the littles that we call them, and also take to task a lot of the hip hop commentators. Now, this is what I will say about Joe Budden. I think Joe Budden had every right to say what he said about Eminem. I think Joe Budden is actually a very qualified person to critique Eminem. He's an MC himself, a good one. He understands the culture musically. You know, so there's different things that I feel is right. Charlamagne, I can understand the irritation with academics as well, and some of these other people. I can that.
I ain't no good. When I heard what he said, I says, oh, the hip hop gods are alive. I thought you bitches died on me. When I heard Joe Budden and how serious this album sounds, I mean, he's still Eminem, but I'm saying he's tied to, I'm delivering a quality album. I'm not gonna overthink this shit. I'm fucking better than 99% of these bitches that even criticize me. Yeah. When he said what he said about Joe Budden, which I'm sure right now, we're probably not going to get a response from Joe Budden if he's playing the industry shit. Because, see, let me tell you what, because we told y'all in the chat, Joe Budden's ass got dissed the first time around. And a lot of you motherfuckers, that's not true. I said, because y'all don't pay attention to bars. I do. I catch all the subliminals from motherfuckers, right? Why I understand why people want to slap the shit out of Drake when they see him, because he does so many subliminals, right? But with Eminem, he gave Joe Budden a warning. Like, I will, don't make me do it. Don't make me do it, because you're Royce's friend. You're not my friend. So I'm just doing this out of respect. But then Joe Budden, you know, when the joint came out, it was clear he was being talked about. But Joe Budden, being Joey, slick, he wasn't talking about me. I didn't hit. You think he was talking about me, Rory? Really? Roy was like, yes, he's talking about you. Even Maul was like, bro, he's talking about you. Nah. Because of that little wiggle space, Joe Budden can do that shit. So people, they'll have reason. Joe Budden's job is reasonable doubt. He would make a great lawyer. I said, he's talking about you, buddy. Right? This time around, Eminem says, oh, so you don't think I was talking about you? Well, I'm going to say your name in the verse, and I am talking about you to see what your retired ass is going to do.
Oh, I love it. You better pick up that mic that got dust on it, Joe Budden. Look, this is what I think about Joe Budden. Joe Budden is a perfect story of when you go out on your own. You know, we let dear Joe Budden do that or say it about the album. Eminem is his boss. So he's supposed to hold Eminem's nuts? I think not. What I like about Joe Budden, he said, I'm not a D12. Nobody's gonna have their nuts over me. I'm my own shit. So kudos to Joe Budden for that, because that's the likable quality. But you are full of shit though at the same time when you said Eminem wasn't talking about you. And we did hear on Thought Crime said he was fucking talking about him, and he was. So it will be interesting to see what Joe Budden says about this. And also it's a interesting dilemma here, or interesting, not dilemma, I would say interesting things that is mixed in here. You got two people part of the culture, two people that have been at times dismissed, and two people that have found their own calling within this culture. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I'll tell you something right now, Joe Budden, if you don't respond, motherfucker, and I'm saying this right now, nigga, if you don't respond, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. Your listeners they gonna be teasing you about that shit. Because not only did Eminem say what everybody's dusty ass that he was talking, because I said if that had have been me and the Chloroseptic remix track came out, god damn it, I'm going in the studio the next night. We're going in the studio that night and we're recording, talking about you. But Joe Budden, because he don't, I'm gonna be honest with you, maybe he uncertain about certain things, maybe he don't want to drag it out, maybe he's in a different space, but for whatever reason, he throwing up the sign, he ain't talking, I'll shut up, whatever. But here's the thing about it. Eminem was able to dish you on not a trash album. He didn't dish you on Relapse. He didn't dish you on Revival where you can throw it all out the water. You're like, oh man, that whole album trash. You dissing me, it don't matter. He actually gave people a good body of work, and he put it in a climatic point later in the album so he can get your attention.
But I think he served though. I mean, if I'm a person in media, Lord Jamal, Joe Budden, because Joe Budden is fully media now. I mean, he loves hip hop and shit, and it's hip hop commentary.
He's media.
But he's media, so this shit he's eating it. I love it. I don't know if he's gonna respond as a rapper, which I mean as an MC, which I would like him, but he more than likely he won't, and he's going to drag this out and get the honey, all the honey he can get. But to be honest, for you, to someone like Eminem, I mean, you just helped these people. Let's say millions of people who don't know about academics. You just told them that don't know, like Lord Jamar podcast is how they know. I'm gonna check out Nubian. No, they ain't gonna go that far, but they're gonna check out Lord Jamar's show. Charlamagne, the same thing, you know. So let's just talk about that half before we even go to the rapper portion of it. I mean, don't you think that even though it's good for Eminem to be honest, at the same time, I mean, this is some good to be on a good album and to be dissed.
I think even the broader scope is good tea altogether, because then we gotta wait for Joe Budden and tell his long ass chapters on some Stephen King shit.
All of them.
You know?
You gotta wait for Lord Jamal to get on Dusty Vad TV. You know, it's all of their responses, yeah.
And so I think Eminem wanted to say that for a long time. He don't give a fuck. He over 300 million. He made his money. He's in, you know, he's just fighting to sustain his legacy because he see what right now. And he felt too many of these detractors who had voice in the culture. I think this is a time where Eminem had the opportunity to understand what was happening, because maybe as a sing person he wasn't paying attention, maybe like a Lord Jamar. But then when you put Lord Jamar, Joe Budden, Charlamagne the God, academics, and it just keeps going. The commentators, they keep going and going. He's looking like, oh shit, these bitches have influence.
So this is the album that Drake.
Yeah, I think he just responded. Yeah, man, that's it.
No, but look, but think about it. He responds to everybody. He didn't give a fuck. Like he said, I'm gonna have more reviews than whatever I'm gonna give y'all anyway. Right. I don't give a fuck. Is this the album Drake should have made, pertaining to Pusha T and everything? Let's say I understand some people say he went too far, but why couldn't he give a really good diss album or diss single without going too far?
Drake had to just stood up to Pusha T. He didn't have to do this because the dynamics with Eminem, they put him in a space where like he said, alone, he gave the world 50 Cent. He gave the world 50 Cent. And people did dismiss completely. They said, well, he brought nothing to this culture.
I think, well, even though to the culture, wait a minute, and people would be like, "There's no correlation there," but there's a correlation there. A lot of people feel Drake has brought nothing.
Well, I don't
to the
care
culture.
about Drake right now. This ain't even about Drake. I'm tired of talking about Drake. Let's talk about this Eminem album. Drake ain't gonna do nothing. He gonna sit up there now, and it's probably you Jerseyans better be careful. He'll make a Jersey Go-Go album.
But look,
okay.
but this is where this is telling though against their generation, because we just said how Eminem went out there, said that everybody had an issue with. It's like on 444 album, Jay-Z talked about all the issues he wanted to talk about. Where he's calling out Spotify with his mixtape album with Beyonce, even though he in the past has been known as being one of the kings of subliminals. He was very, very upfront with what he had issue with. I'm saying though, Do you think this album though will vibrate though? That's my whole point. Like
Yes.
with the Drakes and the rest of them that are currently in the culture, you know, some people feel that. And I'm not just talking about just for him, but do you think people are gonna ask for simple games to be stepped up, or do you think it's gonna be business as usual?
Business as usual. This was very important for Eminem because at his core, he's wanted to be one of the top MCs. Drake started out that way, but he got some of them Barry Bond juices, right? Pusha T completely took Drake out of the rap conversation. Now, there's people who enjoy his rapping, but as far as debating top 5 of this era, as far as, but then one could say rappers have been redefined today, right? So, I think for Eminem, this means something for him because aesthetically holding to that he was being slid out by some of the miscalculations he's made dealing with the market. With Drake, on the other hand, I don't think anything is going to come about anything. I think with this Kanye shit, though, I would watch it, how well Kanye is able to finesse everyone. So far from what I've seen with all of his interviews, everybody's riding with Kanye. They're all riding with Kanye right now. So I don't know. This may call for Drake to not be so light with his hand coming the second time around. And I think he's going to have to go into himself and be honest, you know. But I think.
Well, that's why I'm asking you the question about the Drake because 30 minutes ago, even you mentioned, you said that Eminem could be taking shots at Drake eventually. You said that it seemed like that's something that may be on the table. Do you still feel that way?
I think the shots he took at some of those people he took at right now, I think it was very important. So what he said about Tyler the Creator, which I enjoyed. Look, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was cool with Tyler the Creator until I heard him dissing Eminem, and I was like,
why?
It's a part of the culture now. He's old, he's washed up, or they feel they can take shots at him because of his displacement, right? And it is what it is. But I feel like I could tell he birthed your whole style. You're a little black boy doing it, right? I believe he's from California with his little black nerd squad, the Earl sweatshirt, which I like Earl's sweatshirt. Yeah, I think he's a dope lyricist. But I think things like that needed to happen. If somebody like Drake got out of line, which I don't think Drake would ever do it because he doesn't want to be there. For God's sakes, the whole Pusha T thing kind of shook him up. You know what I'm saying?
You said for God's sake.
Yeah. For God's sakes, he don't want to be embarrassed, and that's the problem, right? I don't think we would ever see a situation, even though it would be something great to look at. But if Eminem ever had decided to take somebody's head off like Drake,
it'd be easy.
It would be very easy.
Let's go to Lord Jamar before we open up the phone lines. He said, basically Eminem threatened him. He said, "Oh, you call me Elvis, don't make me, shake my hips and all that." He's like, he said, if you compare resume to resume, I've brought more to the culture than you. Is that a bit of hypocrisy, though, there? Whether you like Grand Nubian or not, it still is a part of hip-hop history. Do you think there's hypocrisy on Eminem's stance where he says, respect me as an elder, but comes after Lord Jamar? To be fair to Lord Jamar, he did that. Eminem is a really good rapper. He's just a commentary. Yeah, I mean, we don't care about the whole gay thing like he does, but the thing that would overlap between us and Lord Jamar, we did say that pretty much we didn't like the Marshall Mathers LP, didn't feel it aged well, burger flicking stuff. On that lines, I know, so what would you say pertaining to that?
Well, I think Eminem is right. Like I said, I think he should have held his nuts a long time ago. That's the only reason why everybody banged on him. But Lord Jamar, he's free to have his own thoughts. If he feels like me, then I don't like the Marshall Mathers LP. There's nothing wrong to say about it.
Well, he felt like the Killing the Mamas. He just felt that most of Eminem's work didn't relate to him. Even though he could rap, it didn't relate to him.
Lord
culturally.
Jamar is full of shit. You know why? Because he couldn't relate to most of the shit NWA was talking about either. Alright, you just black, but nigga, y'all was walking around with patterns and twigs in your hair. Step down, jump up, jumps the flower pot and all that shit. Everything contextualized from what you was packaged as an artist. One could say you couldn't relate to that. I mean, you can't say you couldn't relate to that part of it either, but I don't want it to be a situation where we feel we can relate to every black rapper too, right? Because think about it. There's a lot of people when Snoop Dogg came out and sold 400,000 units with Doggy Style coming out, right? But many people had never seen what a Crip looked like before until he was on national television.
Fair point, but fair point on relatability, and I agree with you there. What about hypocrisy, though? Again, how do you feel about him saying respect the elders, but then going after Lord Jamal?
I think it's fair.
Criticisms.
Well, I think it's fair if the elders come after you. And you got to remember now, hip-hop has always been competitive, too, because we saw that with Kumo D and LL Cool J. Kumo D felt like, LL should have been respected me, but LL was like, whoa, baby, you shitting on me, though, so fuck you. You know what I'm saying? So that's how it is. That being said, I think Lord Jamar probably needs to reassess just how impactful his voice is, though. A lot of people felt Lord Jamar was a dusty homeless nigga on Vlad's couch. I'm gonna keep it real with you. A lot of people did not know who, of this era, what Lord Jamar contributed to hip hop. You feel me? But that being said, if I was Lord Jamar, I was like, wow, Eminem just fucking dissed me. But Eminem also was irritated because he spotted at what he felt was a cultural hypocrisy, right? He said, I'm not for the culture, but he says you're sitting with Elvis right there. And I agree with him on that. I can see both sides of the coin because at the same time, couch, you weren't sitting on Doggy Diamond's couch. You ain't sitting on no well-known black YouTuber who does hip-hop's couch. So it's like when you say Eminem can't be in the culture because both you motherfuckers happen to rap, might be some irritability there that he got more recognition as a white boy holding the same microphone you held in your career, but at the same time you can't see why guys like Doggy Diamonds have a problem with cats like Vlad. You see what I'm saying? So that's where Eminem even highlights the hypocrisy when he refers to Vlad as Elvis.
All right, so then are we saying here that Lord Jamar's hypocrisy with Vlad TV cancels out the eldership hypocrisy of because of Lord Jamal firing the first shot while being on the couch of Vlad TV, yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, I have issues with criticisms of Eminem and stuff and his presence in hip-hop, but he has brought a lot to hip-hop at the same time. And then two, I can't really listen to somebody who's on the couch of Vlad TV. It's like you gotta be 100 all the way. It's like saying and you're eating a pork sandwich. It just doesn't make no sense.
Yeah, and it is what it is. It's like, and to be real with you, see, when I first saw the video, I had no idea who the fuck Vlad was. I didn't know. I thought he was just a random interviewer, right? But when I found out, who he was, it is what it ain't even nothing personal like that. It's just when you decide to speak in that fashion, in that pro-black extremism as well, because that's what he was also talking about with other points he raised in that same interview against Eminem. Then I said to myself, I says, well, you'll have to be 100 across the board on your end as well. You know what I'm saying? So I think Lord Jamar, to be honest with you, was talking. It was his barbershop talking with Vlad TV. And I think he said it so many times, though, I think it just irritated him and Eminem altogether. You feel me?
Yeah, I respect Grand Nubian as a political hip-hop group, as a conscious hip-hop group. And, their music wasn't bad. And I like a lot of stuff about Brand Nubian, but at the same time, it's just like that Public Enemy thing. Yeah. Public Enemy, man, that music was so important, so changing in the atmosphere of hip-hop. But yet, we see how Chuck Berry, sold out. I mean, and then how Chuck, not Chuck Berry, sorry, that's rock and roll, but how he
the rift between him and Griff.
Yeah, what he did with Cohen, and then the issues even with Professor Griff wanting to debate Cohen all the time and like trying to give him some fucking knowledge. All this shit is just fucked up.
Well, and this is my thing with Lord Jamar. It's like this. The same defenses I bet Lord Jamar would erect on behalf of Vlad TV, Royce the 5'9" and a Dead Proof could say about Eminem. You see what I'm saying? So when I hear Lord Jamar talk about it, I says, you know, I mean, yeah, you got some points, but then at the same time, one could say you're Vlad's Proof. You're Vlad's Royce the 5'9". You may not see yourself like that, but that's what you are. Actually, you and Eminem and the people, the Negroes that surround Eminem and his crew, and what you do with Vlad and the Negroes that y'all got a lot of overlapping qualities, which is my problem with hip hop.
A fact, I agree with you. Yeah. For his relationship with Vlad, you might as well be cool with Eminem. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, what is this? Like, I mean, it's really much to do about nothing. That's what I said. I mean, come on, man, just be cool with who you are. But I think Eminem's just saying, hey, I'm responding back to you.
Also, Nice Guy, Good Guy, and Venom. I thought that was a nice little trio there. Also, the Venom track is in the motion picture of the actual film coming out. And I thought those 3 tracks was nice too. Overall, Prince, from a 1 to 10, what would you give this album?
Oh, I'm going to... Oh, we did lower Cardi B's rating, correct? We had lowered it, right? What did we give?
I said Cardi B album was fun, but you know, I take points away from not writing, not being original.
Yeah, what did we come to the number on?
I think I gave her a 5.
A 5, yeah. Okay. All right. I give Eminem an 8.
I'm feeling an 8.
Strong 8.
A strong 8 as well.
Give him a strong 8. And then the 2 play around tracks at the end with the love interest, I thought it was funny. It reminded me of Superman Eminem. Yeah. But do you feel, that being said, even what he did here, because this is his T album, his 444 album, even though he said those names, do you think we're in a space right now where people really care, though? Even some of those people that were mentioned at this time in this era of...
Yeah, no.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's kind of weird, isn't it?
This is social media where all publicity is good publicity.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to be wasted here.
Yeah. So you know, but
So they do care and they don't. If you got something to sell, then you're in a great space. Joe Budden got something to sell. Lil Jamar got something to sell. Academics, then you're good. If you don't have anything to sell, well then it may be an issue for you.
Well, that being said, I'm very interested in seeing what Joe Budden has to say. I'm not interested in Lord Jamar's talk. I'm just not. Charlamagne, I know he gonna speak your truth, you know, stuttering motherfucker.
You know, he got other things he has to worry about.
Well, he said he hid it because the block was hot, so whatever. But I'm very interested to see what Joe Budden has to say, you know. And I'm sure Rory and Maul is trolling the shit out of him.
Definitely gonna check the show out too.
You said he wasn't talking about you. Anyway, so we give this album the rating an 8. The lines are now open.
Yes, so everybody, let us know what you think. I know y'all wanted to jump into the conversation early, but you know what, your ass is gonna have to wait. But now the phone lines are open where y'all can chop it up with us. Oh my God, everyone! Queenie and I are so excited to present my new show called Kiki's Teaspoon. It's a reality show, and my life is going to be presented to all of you. The people I know, the people I love, the people I don't like. You'll see Queenie. Oh my God, I love Queenie. He's the best dog in the world. You'll see my best friends, Rihanna and Tiana, who are the greatest besties in the world. I keep saying the world because it's true. Become a patron today to watch full episodes for our VIP TC family. That's right, folks.
Woof, woof.
Yeah. Dead in the middle of little did we know.
I'm serious about mine. I'm so sincere.
Now at last I have seen a judgment of Solomon.